Welcome back to the channel. This is Ready Storm and you are watching 7th part of What If Naruto Was Forgotten, Son of Minato. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Minato's office in Konoha. Teams 7 and 9 were waiting for orders in Minato's office. Kakashi had finally recovered and was now in command of his team, which included Shio, Mito, and Yamato. Team 7 remained unchanged as they waited for instructions from the Hokage. Minato placed 8 bingo book entries, each depicting an S-ranked rogue ninja. He looked up and elaborated, "We were able to identify all of the Akatsuki members using the information provided by Yamato from Orochimaru's base. Hidan the Immortal, Kakazu of the Five Hearts, Dediara the Explosive Expert, Kisame the Monster of the Mist, Itachi the Clan Slayer, Toby the Phantom Joker, Conan the Angel of Rain, and the Amikage Pain now make up the Akatsuki." Everyone grimaced slightly as they read the bios and information on each person in the separate bingo book entries that Orochimaru had created. Everyone on the list possessed exceptional abilities. Minato waited for everyone to finish reading before saying, "I am combining both of your teams as a hunt down and kill team for the Akatsuki." Kakashi smirked, "How will we track down the Akatsuki members? These ninjas may have different specialties, but any S-class rogue nin knows how to conceal a trail." "We'll use this," Minato smirked. He displayed a ring that Yamato had stolen from Orochimaru's lair. This ring contains the chakra of each Akatsuki member. I can tell there was a summoning seal on the ring to retrieve it if it was lost, but Orochimaru appeared to have disabled it. Menma will be able to track each member of the Akatsuki using the spider technique you mentioned in your report. Menma nodded, took the ring, and closed his eyes as he followed the chakra signatures inside the ring through the eyes of hundreds of spiders. In the land of fire, a forest path. Menma noticed 2 cloaked men, Kakazu and Hidan, walking down a path toward the fire temple. Stone Cave Land. Menma could see the 2 Akatsuki members resting inside a cave through the rain. Rainy Land. Menma noticed Toby talking with an orange-haired man with purple eyes and a blue-haired woman. These were Pain and Conan, respectively. He was unable to locate Zetsu, so he assumed the plant man was underground, as described in Orochimaru's journals. Office of Minato. The closest Akatsuki members are Hidan and Kakuzu, who are currently on their way to the fire temple, Menma said as he opened his eyes. Minato nodded and addressed the group, "You are no longer on teams 7 and 9, but rather on Team Dawn Hunter. I'm giving this group its first mission. You must go to the fire temple and assassinate Hidan and Kakuzu. Furthermore, you are to retrieve their rings and seal them within this scroll, which has an anti-seal barrier on it to prevent the Akatsuki leader from retrieving it." "Hi," said each member of the newly formed team. Village entrances. Team Dawn gathered in front of the gates to strategize. Menma took a step forward and stated, "According to Orochimaru's reports, Hidan is a cultist who gained immortality from a false god." Anko gave a nod. "And Kakazu of the Five Hearts is an almost immortal man who steals hearts with a kinjutsu to extend his life. If Orochimaru's reports are correct, he can use each of his hearts to fight alongside him." Mito scowled. "Hidan should not be a problem because he won't know we know he's immortal, so he'll most likely let us attack him to prove his immortality. According to the reports, he is very arrogant, so we can use that to our advantage and take him out early." Menma gave a nod, "Yes, just because he can't be killed doesn't mean poison or seals won't work on him. If we cut a body part off, we must seal it into a scroll so that it cannot be reattached." Kakashi took a step forward. "Alright, let's go. We need to get out of here quickly to prevent them from attacking the fire temple, which appears to be their target." Everyone nodded and disappeared into the forest, hurrying to the location where Menma detected the two Akatsuki members. Land of Fire, Fire Temple Road. Hidan and Kakuzu were traversing the Land of Fire. They were taking their time because the two tails, their assigned Jinchuriki, had already been turned in. They were on their way to the Fire Temple to learn more about the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and collect bounties to help fund the Akatsuki. When kunai with explosive tags rained down on the two Akatsuki members, they were arguing about not wasting time and the benefits of spending hours of the day praying to a possible fake god. Both rogue nin easily avoided the explosives by jumping in opposite directions, allowing Team Dawn to split the two members up before they could regroup. Hidan vs. Mito, Yamato, Anko, and Menma. Hidan glared at the three heathens who had cut him off in the middle of his passionate discussion about Jashin. Who are you heathens to stand in the way of Lord Jashin's greatest weapon? He said arrogantly, resting his large scythe on his shoulder. We are the heathens who will be taking your head, Mito said as he dashed forward, forcing Hidan to block with his scythe. Menma drew a large crossbow from a seal on his wrist. He'd changed the design over the years, making the arrows pure venom that shot as fast as he pumped chakra into it. He delegated close combat to Mito and jumped into the trees to attack Hidan from above, while spinning chakra threads around the woods to prevent anyone from leaving or entering the area. He would also throw webs at Hidan to distract him. Yamato was also using his wood style to distract the Jashinist, either by tying up the raging anti-priest or by defending his allies. Mito was dashing around Hidan and leaping away from any retaliatory strike, as was her signature style. Despite Hidan's wild scything style, he was still experienced enough to block the majority of her strikes. Mito, on the other hand, had the advantage of using a sword against a scythe. A scythe was not designed for close combat, but rather to keep your opponent away while dealing superficial wounds, which was essential to Hidan's fighting style. Mito, on the other hand, relies heavily on evasive maneuvers and dodging in conjunction with her swordplay, providing an ideal counter to the immortal Jashin worshipper. Hidan eventually slipped up, allowing Anko to sneak up behind him and cut off his head with her wrist blades. Hidan's head lay on the ground, still yelling at the Konoha ninjas. You heathens are damned. Lord Jashin will take a bath in all of your blood. The world will burn in front of him. And I'll be right there with him, murdering you mother fu. Mito and Anko sealed the head and body within separate scrolls, cutting his rant short. Menma jumped down and sealed the Akatsuki ring in the special scroll he had prepared ahead of time, then turned to his teammates and said, "Let's go help the other group." They nodded and dashed into the woods. Shio vs. Kakazu, Kakashi vs. Yakumo, Lee vs. Kakazu. Kakazu squinted at his four opponents. He had suspected that they were attempting to separate them from the start, but that idiot Hidan had fallen for it so easily. He was trying to figure out how they found them so quickly. They had remained off the radar for a few days after successfully capturing the two tails. This group was either extremely lucky, or they knew how to find them. He needed to win this fight and notify his superior. He made the decision to take things seriously right away. The masked rogue nin's back pulsed, and four wire beasts erupted from it. Each beast wore a different colored mask that represented its element. Shio drew her sword, the wind around her intensifying, and dashed forward with Lee, who had decided to engage the beasts while Yakumo and Kakashi dealt with Kakuzu. Shio vs. Masked Beasts. The beasts opened their mouths and launched highly destructive beams of their respective elements at the approaching ninja. Before the attacks, Lee appeared and ran through four hand seals before calling out, "Mighty fashion." The turtle's posture. A green shield made of hexagrams wrapped around his body completely negated the attack from the fire and water beams. This combat style was a defensive might family tradition taught by the Turtle Clan. Since he had the Sanbi sealed inside of him, he had only recently learned the chakra-based moves. Shio swung her sword in a wide arc, creating a wall of wind that blocked the gust of wind and lightning beam from the other two masks. After the attack, she dashed forward, jumped high in the air, and slashed repeatedly, sending waves of razor-sharp wind cuts at the two masked beasts. Some of the cuts directed at him were avoided by the wind-based beasts, but the lightning beast was quickly sliced into pieces. Lee appeared behind her back, and she noticed that the fire mask had been smashed and that Lee was wearing what appeared to be boxing gloves made of glowing green hexagon squares. Only the water and wind beasts remained. She gave Lee a slight nod before leaping into the air, allowing the air to propel her upwards. Lee punched forward where she had been and launched the boxing glove at the wind beast, knocking it back a ways, before turning around and punching Shio's feet, launching her forward at high speeds. Shio spun in midair, the wind gathering around her as she spun like a top through the lightning beast. She regained her balance and landed gracefully.
The lightning mask behind her appeared to be in perfect condition until the entire beast shifted and slid in half.
Lee jumped into the air and made a fist without even looking in Shio's direction, mighty fashion. Tortoise's fortitude. He made a massive green hexagonal fist and threw it at the wind beast. The ground beast retaliated with a strong gust of wind, and the two attacks clashed until Lee twisted midair and unleashed another massive green fist on the defense. The two combined attacks breached the wind wall and completely destroyed the mask. Lee and Yakumo both nodded and ran to help Kakashi and Yakumo. Yakumo, Kakashi vs. the main body of Kakuzu. As he was separated from his wire beasts, Kakuzu frowned. His opponents were unsurprised that he had used this technique. Something was clearly wrong here. He was also aware of his disadvantage in the face of Kakashi of the Sharingan. His primary heart was an earth style, which was balanced by Kakashi's lightning style. From the bingo books, he also recognized Ibiki Morino's apprentice. He had to be cautious because the girl was supposed to be very sadistic with her illusions. He refocused on the battle when he heard birds chirping and had to avoid Kakashi's famous Chidori. The rogue nin tried to retaliate against the Jonin by turning his fist to stone, but his fist passed through the Jonin. His eyes widened and his chakra quickly fluctuated, just in time to stop another Chidori from entering his heart. He did, however, sustain a severe cut on his side and several burns as a result of deflecting the lightning bolt. "You'll pay for that," he grumbled. Kakashi jumped back and said, "I highly doubt that." The Jonin revealed his Sharingan eye and performed several hand signs before exclaiming, "Chidori Senbon." The Jonin swung his hand, and hundreds of lightning needles flew at Kakuzu. The man in question grunted and sank underground to avoid the needles, about to launch a counterattack when he became suddenly claustrophobic. He had stopped being claustrophobic as a child while learning Earth-style ninjutsu. So it had to be a trick of the light. He dispelled the genjutsu by performing several hand signs and shooting spears of each across the clearing. He couldn't detect any chakra signatures, so he decided to rise. He slowly rose from the ground, looked around, and frowned when he couldn't find his opponents. However, he exclaimed as a lightning fist protruded from his chest. Yakumo appeared, balancing on one of the spikes, and Kakashi appeared behind him. He had to be impressed, despite his impending death. Hide your chakra presence was one of the most difficult genjutsu to cast. He wished he could warn the Akatsuki that they had a way to find them before the darkness enveloped him. Kakashi sighed and took his fist off the rogue nin's chest before turning to face the rest of his team, who had just arrived. He saw the scrolls in the hands of the other team and nodded, mission accomplished. Konoha. Minato nodded and smiled as Kakashi finished reading his report, everyone should be proud. You were successful in obtaining bounties for 2 S-class criminals. You will each receive a portion of the bounty and S-class mission payment. Now I want you to enjoy the rest of your week. However, Yamato, Anko, and Kakashi must remain behind. Except for Kakashi and Yamato, everyone left the room. Office of the Hokage. Minato frowned and took out the documents discovered by Yamato from Sai. He addressed 3 of his most trusted Jonin. I've been looking through the archives and asking around, and it appears that Danzo is getting involved in some shady business. Human trafficking, information selling, and other illegal activities. I do not yet have sufficient evidence to convict him, but I am getting closer. Kakashi smirked. Danzo is well known for his ability to hide his tracks. To convict him, we'll need a solid case. Anko agreed with a nod. Yeah, he's a jerk who reminds me of Orochimaru in far too many ways, but he's as smart as fuck. He will be able to avoid prosecution by relying solely on circumstantial evidence. Yes, and how about going against a direct order from a Hokage? Minato nodded. Yamato blinked in bemusement before widening his eyes in recognition. What do you mean, Root? I thought Sandamine had ordered it disbanded after my incident? Minato sighed and took a mask from his desk, placing it in front of the 3 Jonin, who gasped in surprise when they saw the completely blank mask with the word "Nay" branded on the forehead. Minato explained, resting his head on his interlocked fingers, this mask was discovered in a seal on the island of Sai. The proper age to join Nay was 10 years old, which was 5 years after the organization was disbanded due to Sai's age of 16. I'd like you to search the city for potential Nay bases and report back to me on your findings. If we can find just one base, we'll have enough evidence to execute Danzo. Each Jonin nodded and exited the room, aware that Danzo's time in this world was drawing to a close. Streets of Konoha. Shio was walking down Konoha's market, buying groceries, when she noticed Menma up ahead and blushed a little because he was dressed casually. Menma was now dressed in black pants and a red short-sleeved turtleneck, which complemented his long spiky black hair. Her Yami spoke from her mind as she was about to approach him. Damn. Take a look at that $1. Shio, you should go after that, or I'll take over and take it for you. Shio spluttered at the voice in her head, drawing some glances from those around her as she tried to compose herself and speak in her head, why Yami? I can't have a relationship with him because he's my brother. Yami laughed, please. Until you were 13, you had barely known each other. He's also undergone so many transformations that I'd be surprised if any Uzumaki or Namikaze genes remained in his body. If you don't go after him, I'm taking over this body early to get a stake in him before anyone else. Shio flushed from head to toe just thinking about her ex-brother in that way. She couldn't help but think she had feelings for him. Menma had grown incredibly handsome over the years, and she admired him greatly. As she spoke, she could almost feel Yami's smug grin, so even Miss Pure thinks he's attractive, eh? You can't hide anything from me because I embody your dark emotions, including lust. As she ran away, steam seemed to rise from her head, ignoring everyone's puzzled looks. She fled because she couldn't deny her feelings for her brother to Yami. She could hear Yami laughing at her host's body situation in her head. It was delicious irony to Shio's dark side that her pure side would fall for her own brother, whom she had ignored and forgotten for 13 years. Along with Menma. Menma looked up to see his ex-sister fleeing with a red face. He wondered if she was getting a fever, and hoped she wasn't because it would make it difficult for her to fight the Akatsuki. Menma had no idea that within his own seal Menma's denseness made Inari laugh silently. Shio's feelings for Menma were obvious to the god for some time. He'd grown a lot since the last time Menma appeared in his mindscape, and he now had 5 tails. He sat down, still smirking, planning how to bring the two together. After all, they were made for each other. Base of Orochimaru. As he lay in bed, Orochimaru coughed up blood. His time in this body was coming to an end. He needed to start the ritual to take Sasuke's body as soon as possible or he would die. When he sensed a chakra outside the door, he had just sent Kabuto to get him more medicine. He raised his head, expecting to see Kabuto, but instead coughed up blood as a pure green spear impaled his chest. The door was blown open, and Sasuke entered with a glowing spear over his shoulder. Orochimaru clenched his teeth and raged, "What is this? How could you betray me?" "I am not betraying you. I was never on your side. You provided me with the ideal resources to hone my ability without the constraints of Konoha, but your usefulness has come to an end. Do you think you can end me? I am immortal," scowled Orochimaru. "The spirits call for your blood, Orochimaru, and you who have betrayed thousands deserve nothing but hell." Sasuke readied his spear and pierced Orochimaru's heart. The snake Sannin screamed in agony as his body burned from within and exploded from the energy within him. Sasuke stared silently at the mutilated chunks of meat in the room. He was surprised that killing the snake Sannin, weakened or not, was so simple. That's why he was prepared and backed away the moment a large snake tried to bite him. So your soul has been so twisted it reflects the body. Now you are just a snake. You are not even worthy of a human body, so you must steal others. Sasuke smirked as he observed the white snake made up of many smaller snakes. Orochimaru became enraged and yelled in serpent-like tones, "Be quiet. I am immortal. USS shall die." Sasuke sighed and walked away, only to reappearance after slicing the snake into pieces with two short spears. He smelled the toxin being released by the snake but ignored it. Orochimaru had long made him immune to almost all poisons. He wouldn't put his resistance to the test against his former comrade Menma, but he had enough to withstand the paralytic poison. He was about to leave the room when Orochimaru's head laughed. "What does it take to finally kill you?" He sighed as he observed the laughing head. Despite having his head disconnected from his lungs, Orochimaru exclaimed, "I am immortal." Sasuke was suddenly transported to what appeared to be a snake's stomach. He looked around and noticed 3 people were trapped inside the fleshy belly. He realized right away where he was. He was inside the white snake elder's stomach. Because it was supposedly impossible to escape from, Orochimaru used his ritual to change bodies here. He wasn't concerned. He'd been plotting a counter to the ritual since learning about it 3 years ago. He noticed the real body of Orochimaru in the distance, which was also covered in the fleshy floor. The Uchiha ignored the flesh covering his body and used the jutsu he developed to counter this technique. His green Sharingan eyes spun hypnotically as he exclaimed, "Mangekyo Sharingan." Yada Mirror. This was his Mangekyo Eye's second ability, the ability to reflect any attack once per day. From the most destructive nature manipulation to the most subtle genjutsu to the most powerful sword thrust. The ritual was completely reversed, with Sasuke absorbing Orochimaru rather than the other way around, adding the man's power to his own. He left the snake's room, briefly speaking with Kabuto before exiting the base. He needed subordinates. Konoha, 2 weeks later. After hearing some shocking information, Team Cloudhunter entered the Hokage's office. Shio couldn't believe it when she heard, Orochimaru is dead. Killed by Sasuke. Yes, all my spies in Orochimaru's ranks tell me the same thing, the man is dead, Jiraiya nodded. That's fine, Menma said, but we need to focus on the Akatsuki, not the betrayer. Shio approached Menma, frustrated. Sasuke was not unimportant because he was not a member of the Akatsuki. Menma noticed the expression and said, Sasuke's life goal is to murder Itachi, so ignoring him is the best way to take down the Akatsuki. Shio bit her lower lip. She wanted to track down Sasuke and persuade him to return home after killing Orochimaru, but she also wanted to see the Akatsuki dead. She also knew that because of his Sharingan, Sasuke stood the best chance of defeating Itachi. She sighed and nodded, acknowledging her ex logic. Brothers. Now, we are keeping Sasuke in the bingo book as an A-class missing nin, but I have secretly ordered the Anbu and Hunter nin to stop searching for him until he has either been killed or kills Itachi. If Sasuke returns to the village after killing Itachi, he will be pardoned for his actions, Minato continued, but for now, I have your next two targets, Deidara of the explosive palms and Menma nodded and re-entered the spider consciousness. The land of fire, forest path. Menma saw Deidara and a masked man walking down the road through the eyes of a spider. He remembered the blonde ninja from the river land. Despite blowing himself up, he was found to be alive. Office of the Hokage. They are currently near the town of Tanzuka-gai, Menma said as he opened his eyes and looked at the Hokage. Then you must find and kill the Akatsuki before they find another Jinchuriki. Minato nodded. Everyone nodded and went to the village gates to prepare for the fight ahead. From Sasuke's perspective. Sasuke frowned as he looked around his first Ali's room. He only knew this person by reading Orochimaru's notes. Haku was apparently not the last Hyuuden wielder.
Before the purge, the person behind this vault door was so skilled with ice jutsu that she drew the attention of Orochimaru.
She apparently managed to turn her ice black, much like black lightning. Her clan became afraid of her and sold her to Orochimaru. She understood betrayal and would be an excellent addition to his team. He summoned a small spear and blasted the door open. The freezing cold room assaulted him upon entering. The vault was covered in black ice, and a girl with white hair and icy blue eyes sat atop a frozen throne. Anyone who didn't know better would mistake her for a corpse. Who are you and why have you entered my room? The girl asked the black-haired intruder. The emotionless voice made Sasuke shiver. On the emotionless scale, the girl could compete with Itachi. He took a step forward and said, I require assistance against my brother, Itachi Uchiha, and I am offering you freedom from this vault after my brother is dead. That sounds like an acceptable deal. My name is Makomi Yuki. I assume you're the Sasuke I heard my guards talk about? The white-haired girl said after a few minutes of studying the Uchiha in front of her. They exited the lair together after Sasuke nodded. He freed the other experiments and prisoners, but none of them piqued his interest enough for him to join his team. They walked together for a while before Makomi turned to Sasuke and said, I know you're the type who doesn't do things without a plan, so I'm assuming you already know the other two members of this team? Yes, the two I'm interested in are Jugo and Karen. Jugo has a unique bloodline limit that forces him to transform into monstrous forms, and Karen is a medic and one of Orochimaru's best sensors. Makomi nodded, wise decisions. With your Sharingan, you'll be able to control Jugo's rage, and Karen will be our group's support. Sasuke agreed with a grunt, relieved that his first companion understood his reasoning. Fire Land, Akatsuki's location. Shio sensed the chakra of the two Akatsuki members as Team Cloud Hunter arrived at a clearing. Dodge! Yelled the sensor as a clay bird flew to the ground and exploded. When they saw the two Akatsuki members, they took their positions. Well, if it isn't the Konoha ninjas from the Land of Rivers, I still need to get revenge for cutting off my arms. Deidara said arrogantly, his hands in his pouches. He was about to continue taunting them when Shio appeared in front of them and slashed through Toby. She was about to attack Deidara when she was forced to retreat due to a series of small bombs. Kakashi looked at Toba's downed form and asked Shio, "Did you get him?" Shio frowned as she remembered what she felt as she slashed through Toby. According to Orochimaru's reports, the strange man was capable of surviving any attack by unknown means. From being a genjutsu master to having a special bloodline limit, Orochimaru had many theories. She felt no resistance as she cut through the man, and the chakra in his chest area vanished. She turned to her team, ignoring Toba's annoying voice arguing with Deidara, and explained what she sensed. He seems to be able to turn insubstantial somehow. I would have detected an illusion. He can also make his chakra disappear, so I assume he either can turn his entire body to nothing, or he transports his body parts elsewhere to avoid damaging himself. We should focus on Deidara while half our group focuses on Toby. Do not use taijutsu against him, it appears to be ineffective against him, Menma said. Everyone nodded and separated. Deidara versus Menma, Shio, Lee, Mito. Distract him. I'll end this quickly with senjutsu, Menma said to his teammates. The three Konoha ninja nodded and turned to Deidara. Shio began to swing her sword gracefully, hurling cutting wind at Deidara. Lee remained in the background, preparing his turtle stance abilities to defend his allies. Mito jumped forward, following the wind's waves, to engage Deidara at close range. Menma entered the forest and wrapped himself in a chakra cocoon, beginning to absorb nature chakra for his transformation. This time, he'd advanced to level 2. 10 seconds. Lee had to construct a large dome of panels to protect the two swordswomen from Deidara's bombs. Shio kept using her wind powers to counter Deidara's explosions and try to kill the effeminate man. Mito used her natural sword technique to jump around the explosions while attempting to cut down the man who was rapidly dodging. 30 seconds. The fight raged on until Deidara took to the skies and dropped bombs on the three ninja. Shio's wind wall and Lee's shields shielded the Konoha team. 50 seconds. The battle had progressed to the point where Deidara was riding a dragon against three Konoha genin. However, thanks to Lee's stances and Shio's wind wall, nearly all of Deidara's attacks are countered. 1 minute. When Deidara and the three Konoha genin sensed a massive power emanating from the forest, they both paused. Deidara stared at the forest, puzzled, before widening his eyes as a large amount of spider silk emerged from the forest and drew his dragon to the ground.
He just made it off in time to avoid the collision.
He struggled to get to his feet after the jarring landing, and his eyes widened when he saw his new opponent. The Konoha genin had mutated into a half-man, half-spider hybrid. Except for black tribal lines following his veins, his upper torso was the same. The strangest aspect of his transformation was that his lower body had become a spider. He was preparing bombs in his hands when he blinked and the half-spider was already in front of him, piercing both of his shoulders with its blade-like legs. He knew he was going to die when he looked up at his opponent's face. Along with Menma. Menma felt his body shift and expand as soon as he wrapped himself in a cocoon due to his metamorphosis. The pain was excruciating, but he had been extensively trained to deal with the discomfort of the transformation. The toxin in his blood began to pump faster, giving him the appearance of vein tattoos. He sent his chakra in a wave around him to blast the cocoon apart after a minute of gathering the necessary energy. When he saw the blonde Akatsuki member flying on a white dragon, he shot spider silk dragons from his chakra and brought them to the ground. He shot at the Akatsuki member at high speeds, piercing his shoulders and injecting him with one of his strongest toxins, his own blood. Deidara was aware that he was dying. When he felt the poison course through his veins, he knew he only had one choice. If I'm going to die, I'm taking you all with me, fuckers. He opened a storage seal on his tongue and swallowed his suicide bomb sculpture. Soon, black lines appeared all over his body, and he was absorbed into a Pac-Man-like disc that shone brightly. Menma quickly realized the danger and grabbed all of his allies before disappearing into a plume of smoke, using the seals on his allies fighting further away to evacuate them as well. With all of his chakra being pumped into the explosive, Deidara could barely form a sentence, but he managed to shout out to the world one last time, "Art as an explosion." Many villages in the surrounding area would report a massive blue explosion that could be seen and felt for miles. Deidara left his imprint on the world in his final moments. The scar left by his explosion would never heal and became known as the Dead Scar. Banned Forest. When Kakashi, Shio, Mito, Yakumo, Lee, and Yamato opened their eyes, they saw a vast forest covered in spider webs. They were in the middle of what appeared to be a silken strand city. Menma was back to normal except for his shredded shirt. Kakashi looked around and reapplied his headband over his eyes before asking, "Where are we?" The summoning realm of the Spider Clan. Deidara was planning on blowing up that entire area in a suicide bombing. "What happened with you four? Did you manage to kill Toby?" Menma replied after unsealing a black turtleneck and putting it on. "No, the annoying bastard was slippery. Every time we attacked, he would somehow get away or turn intangible. The only attack that even worried him was Kakashi's Mangekyo Sharingan." "I see, then we can't tell if he's alive or dead from Deidara's explosion," Menma said, frowning. Before anyone else could respond, the Konoha ninja heard a voice say, "It's been a long time since a human who isn't a part of our summoning contract has set foot in this sacred forest. I hope you don't make this a regular occurrence, Menma." Team Cloudhunter looked around and noticed a stunning black-haired woman wearing a black gown with silver web designs. "Lady Arachne, I am sorry for bringing them here, but the enemy we were fighting used a large-ranged technique that would have killed them all," Menma said as he stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Yes, I sensed the death of many spiders in your area. It is a tragic loss," Arachne nodded. "I remember you, I fought against you 3 years ago," Shio said as he walked forward. "Ah yes, you were that girl. I would say it is nice to see you again, but humans other than our summoner are normally not welcome here. Since the explosion has passed, I will ask you to leave, or the others will grow restless," Arachne said as she turned around. Everyone except Menma tensed slightly as they heard thousands of arachnids scurrying around. Menma, on the other hand, remained calm and nodded. "I thank you for your hospitality, Arachne-sama. We will be leaving." "Yes, go. But do return for a visit, Menma. It is so nice to be able to chat with someone who can talk back," Arachne said kindly to her summoner. Menma nodded, and they vanished in a cloud of smoke. As she watched the spider summoner vanish, Arachne frowned. Soon, Menma's final test with the Spider Clan would arrive. She despised deceiving her summoner, but it was necessary for the Spider Clan's survival. He'd have to pass the final test, just like she had so long ago. Konoha. They reported to the Hokage after reappearing near the village. Minato smiled as he read the report to the team. He was correct to assign teams 7 and 9 to find the Akatsuki. They were quickly becoming one of the strongest teams he had in Konoha. Congratulations everyone. You have defeated another Akatsuki member and retrieved another one of the rings. It is a shame that Toby escaped, but you have retrieved vital information on his abilities that will help us the next time we run into him. You will be awarded the mission payment and a week's rest. Everyone smiled as they heard the news, feeling upbeat about the future. They had no idea, however, that another team had just formed with the same goals. The Akatsuki is destroyed. Unknown address. Sasuke stood in front of the 3 ninja he had chosen. Karen Uzumaki, Mikomi Yuki, and Jugo. For the time being, we will move as a single unit, known as Team Hubby. Our goal is the death of Itachi Uchiha and anyone associated with him. If you follow me, we will work to accomplish your own goals after Itachi is dead. Everyone nodded, and they began jumping through the forest to a nearby town to learn more about Itachi. Soon, brother, vengeance shall be mine. Sasuke's eyes glowed green as they traveled. Fire Forest Land. 4 blurs darted through the trees, weaving their way between the large branches. They were on their way to the old Uchiha base. After his meeting with his older brother, Sasuke ground his teeth together. Flashback. Sasuke stood in a cave where Itachi was said to be hiding out, based on an anonymous tip. He didn't believe the tip, but even if Itachi wasn't here, he could figure out where his brother was. As he stalked through the cave, he held his katana ready. He'd left his 3 teammates at the door to prevent anyone from interfering with the upcoming battle. When he reached the end of the cave, he came to a halt and stared at his brother. They sparred silently until Itachi spoke first. Hasn't it been a long time, Sasuke? The spirits of all the people you've killed demand your blood, Itachi, Sasuke said, turning green. Itachi spoke with his eyes closed. Yes, I knew that when I murdered them all. Do you believe you can avenge them? I can with these eyes, Itachi, said Sasuke, activating his Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi didn't seem to react when he saw the Mangekyo, but he did raise an eyebrow. Oh? Who did you kill in order to get those eyes, little brother? Sasuke locked his gaze on the kin slayer. I didn't kill anyone to get these eyes. They were awakened by my hatred and determination to surpass you. Itachi made another passive face and commented, indeed? Then we'll have to confront each other. Meet me in the land of fire at the old Uchiha hideout. We'll leave it there. Itachi burst into crows and flew out of the cave after saying this. Sasuke clenched his teeth as he realized his brother had lured him here using a clone and he had not noticed. He exited the cave and motioned for his teammates to follow, explaining what Itachi's clone had told him on the way. Mikomi raised an eyebrow in response to the information. It's almost certainly a trap. He's teasing you. Sasuke gave a nod. I can't let him get away, so I'll play his game for the time being. You 3 will act as guards to keep others from interfering. Jugo spoke with a nod. According to the birds, Itachi was seen entering the building, and Kisame Hoshigaki is standing guard outside. I'm sure Itachi doesn't want anyone interfering with your fight. Karen raised her voice. Kisame is there. His chakra is higher than anything I've ever felt. I feel like I'm drowning in the sea. The 4 ninja landed on a rooftop near the abandoned Uchiha hideout, where they saw Kisame standing with Samahata over his shoulder. The man with shark skin grinned ferociously at the group. I see Itachi was right about you coming, Sasuke. However, you will have to leave your friends behind. Don't worry, I'll only hurt them if they try to break into the building. You have my word on it. What is the worth of an oath by a man who butchers his own people at the word of a tyrant? Mikomi questioned. Kisame smirked as he looked at the girl. Oh ho. If it isn't Mikomi Yuki, who is it? I assumed you died along with the other Yuki clan members. Pity. Mikomi moved quickly, summoning 2 large arm braces with curved blades and slashing at Kisame. The shark-like man deflected the attack with his sword, smirking at the black ice user. Kisame slung his sword over his shoulder and addressed the Yuki, saying, if you want to fight me, that's fine, but no one gets past here except the Uchiha. Sasuke looked around at his allies, who all nodded and jumped past the shark into the Uchiha hideout. Uchiha Hideaway. The two brothers faced each other for the first time in 3 years. For a while, Sasuke stared at the personification of his rage. Itachi sat on a throne with his eyes closed, as if Sasuke didn't deserve his attention. He slightly ground his teeth as Itachi opened his eyes and spoke, "Sasuke, you always surprise me. I expected you to attack me the moment you walked into this room." "I wanted to ask you something," Sasuke said, refusing to take the bait. Itachi cocked his brow. "What could you possibly want to ask me at this point in the game, little brother?" Sasuke widened his gaze. "Who assisted you in slaughtering the entire Uchiha clan?" Itachi's pupils dilated. "So you worked it out." As he began to shout, Sasuke's eyes began to glow green. The Uchiha clan was one of Konoha's most powerful. Even if you were the Uchiha prodigy, you couldn't kill them all in one night without raising any alarms. "Who assisted you? Please respond." Itachi sighed and shut his eyes. "You're right. That night, I received assistance. Madara Uchiha, the clan's founder, assisted me." Sasuke's eyes opened wide in surprise as he remembered what the spirit of vengeance had told him. Flashback. Callista spoke to the younger Sasuke. Madara Uchiha gained an extended lifespan by murdering his own brother and stealing his eyes, resulting in the creation of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He is still active today and is to blame for numerous tragedies. Even I am unaware of the extent to which his corruption has spread throughout the elemental nations. Flashback concludes. Sasuke's eyes were ablaze with green fire. "So you sold out our clan to that man. I'll just add that to the list of reasons why I should kill you." As a spear pierced Itachi's chest, his eyes widened. He looked at the Sasuke he'd been speaking with and saw it disintegrate into green light. He looked behind his chair and saw the real Sasuke with the glowing spear in his hand. He took another step forward. "You've grown stronger, but you're still blind, Sasuke." As Itachi swung his sword down behind him, Sasuke narrowed his eyes and jumped. The entire room shifted, and the Itachi he had pierced vanished. The real Itachi was observed by the green-eyed Uchiha, who noticed the katana in his hands. Except for the pure black blade, the blade was simple in design. The guard consisted of the Sharingan's 3 tomo. He recognized the sword and nearly screamed in rage, "You stole the Uchiha sword." Itachi did not respond to the accusation and spoke instead, "This sword can only be wielded by the clan leader. I am the rightful heir because I am the clan head's oldest son." Sasuke extended 2 of his spears to the ground, transforming them into 2 scythes, and yelled at his older brother, "Then I will rip that sword from your cold dead hands." He dashed forward, swinging his scythes in graceful arcs, putting Itachi on the defensive. Itachi showed no weakness, easily deflecting the 2 scythes as they danced through the Uchiha base. He decided to increase his power slightly and remembered Shisui, who had taught him this technique. His sword caught fire, causing the katana to grow to the size of a broadsword. From afar, all that could be seen was green fire meeting red fire as the 2 ninja clashed in the near darkness of the room. Sasuke remembered his teacher Kakashi as he channeled lightning into his scythes to create green lightning, greatly increasing his damage and scythe effectiveness. Itachi was reminded of his mother Makoto as he used illusions to defend himself against the deadly green lightning with his flames and sword. His mother had taught him the art of kenjutsu, which he used effectively against his younger brother. As he blasted the area in front of him with a large explosion of green flames, Sasuke remembered his former teammate, Shio. Before the Chunin exams, he had often practiced this technique with Shio. They had a lot of fun combining their abilities. Unbeknownst to each other, they were fighting not only each other, but also the memories that clung to their techniques and the figures who inspired the beautiful dance of death. It was appropriate for their final battle to honor their past memories with their allies and family. Their dance was cut short when a section of the ceiling was blown open by Sasuke and Itachi's flames, and they both jumped to the roof to avoid falling debris. The two stared across the hole at each other, letting go of their memories and focusing solely on their fight. Itachi focused chakra on his left eye and activated his Mangekyo Sharingan, and memories of each member of his clan flashed before his eyes. He let go of each face as he exclaimed, "Amaterasu." Sasuke also recognized the villagers, clan members, and allies he had befriended in Konoha prior to his betrayal. Instead of throwing them away, he kept them close in his mind as he brought both his hands forward, activated his Mangekyo Sharingan, and exclaimed, "Yata Mirror." A massive flaming shield erupted in front of the sun god's black flames. People could see the two techniques clashing for miles. Black flames flickered and tried to consume the shield, creating a spectacular display of light at the top of the Uchiha outpost. When the light faded, Sasuke saw that both attacks had cancelled each other out. He panted heavily, having expended the majority of his chakra in that technique. The chakra cost of the Yata mirror was directly proportional to the power of the technique it defends against. The Amaterasu had to be one of the most potent techniques ever devised. Itachi panted from overusing the Amaterasu, holding his bleeding eye. He didn't recognize his younger brother's technique, but it accomplished the impossible. It negated the black sun flames. As he stood up, he winced. He had to use most of his chakra to forcefully negate his own Amaterasu flames from reflecting on himself as a result of Sasuke's technique. Sasuke took a deep breath, knowing he had one more trick up his sleeve. His final technique would consume the majority of his remaining chakra, but it would undoubtedly end his brother's life. He channeled chakra into both of his eyes and prepared his Mangekyo's final technique. Itachi's eyes widened as green orbs appeared around the now destroyed roof of the Uchiha hideout and spun in a dome around the two opponents. The orbs spun so fast that they appeared to be inside a Hyuga's Kaiten. He pondered the technique's purpose until orbs began to stream from around the dome and manifested into human shapes. As he saw his parents, Shisui, clan members, and many others he had killed in his life, he couldn't help but gasp. As they stood behind Sasuke, they were all looking at him with sadness. As he finished his technique, Sasuke gasped for air. The final technique of his eyes was Yami, who summoned the spirits of the pure world into this one for a brief moment to assist him in this fight. He shaped another spear in his hands and held it up to the dome's center. The spirits around him gave Itachi one last pitying look before being absorbed by the spear. The spear glowed bright green to the point where it was difficult to look at. As he was empowered by every human Itachi had killed in his lifetime, Sasuke's entire body was enveloped in green flames. He felt hands on his shoulder and returned his gaze to see his parents looking at him proudly but also sadly. His mother's spirit appeared to be crying, while his father looked on, sad. They both reached out and placed their hands on the spearhead, greatly enhancing the glow of his spear. As Sasuke raised the spear and threw it at his brother, time seemed to slow. Itachi smiled slightly as he saw the approaching green spear and widened his eyes. His brother would be just fine without him right now. As Itachi was speared through the heart with the spear, the background appeared to be painted red. Sasuke panted heavily as he stared at his brother's impaled face. He was completely out of chakra at this point, so he leaned back against a wall behind him. He looked at his brother, his eyes widening in horror as his brother lurched towards him. He couldn't believe his brother could move with his heart pierced. He must have used his entire chakra supply to move his entire body. He was too exhausted to move and could only watch Itachi approach, morbidly and fearfully. He closed his eyes in fear because his brother was right in front of him, but opened them in surprise when he felt a simple poke to his forehead instead of pain. In shock, he looked at his brother. As blood ran down Itachi's chin, he smiled for the first time in 10 years. He could feel his life slipping away, but he knew he had to say these words before he died. "I'm sorry, Sasuke, this is the last time." He collapsed to the ground, surrounded by the green spirits of all the people he had killed. Uchiha, who was nearly dead, noticed his parents and Shisui at the front of the crowd, smiling sadly at him and reaching out their hands for him to come to them. He looked down at his impaled body and began walking towards them, looking exactly like he did when he was 13, still innocent of his family's blood. He nodded and hugged his family before turning to his brother, who was unconscious on the ground, and knowing that his mission was finally complete. It was now up to Sasuke and his friends to put a stop to Madara. He could finally reunite with his family. Away from the hideout. As he deflected another strike from Mikomi, Kisame closed his eyes and sighed briefly. He had no chakra sensing ability, but he knew Itachi was dead. He'd always known Itachi was going to die at the hands of his younger brother. He had no idea why Itachi had chosen death over his brother. But he admired Itachi as a person and knew he died with dignity. He jumped away from the ice user and reflected on all the times he had spoken to Itachi. "I wonder if you realized your worth as a person at the end, Itachi. There is no place on Earth where people like us will be accepted. But we recognized each other and eventually became teammates. I hope we can fight together again in the next life." He concealed his grief from Sasuke's team and spoke. "They appear to have resolved their conflict. You can now pass and see what happens." Mikomi scowled, but she knew her team captain was more important than vengeance. Team Hubby's 3 members rushed into the Uchiha hideout and made their way to the roof, where they discovered the 2 Uchiha brothers laying down. One was simply unconscious, while the other was clearly dead, as evidenced by the hole where his heart should have been. Karen examined Sasuke's injuries and placed him on her back, looking around at her companions. "We should take him back to the hideout, where we can tend to his injuries and plan the next step," she said. Jugo and Mikomi nodded and vanished in a flash of light. They would have been seen by a whirling vortex that revealed Akatsuki member Tobi if they had stayed for a few more seconds. Under his mask, the masked man approached Itachi's body and frowned. His original plan was to kidnap Sasuke and tell him a slightly fabricated story about the Uchiha revolt and Konoha's involvement in the Uchiha clan's destruction. But it appeared that Sasuke had been whisked away before he could. He was about to extract the eyes of the fallen Uchiha when he narrowed his eyes in rage. Itachi appeared to have averted his gaze in his final moments. He walked away, leaving the eyeless body out in the open. Konoha, several days later. Minato wiped his eyes with his hand as he closed the report. Sasuke appeared to have finally accomplished his goal and killed his brother. He was deeply saddened that Itachi had died in this manner, despised by the world for concealing his clan's crimes. He knew Itachi was one of the Leaf's best heroes and despised having to conceal this fact. He did, however, keep his promise to Itachi all those years ago. Itachi's death would be used to redeem the Uchiha. He gazed over Konoha, wondering how his sensei was doing on his mission. Jiraiya had gone to the village hidden in the rain a week before to investigate Pain and Konan. Jiraiya had gone to scout the village for their influence because Orochimaru's notes were vague on their abilities. He could only hope that his sensei would be fine. Hiding village in the rain. Jiraiya coughed up blood as the 6 paths of pain impaled chakra metal spears in his back. He grimaced as he realized his death was near. He burned his final message to Konoha on the back of the toadpaw with a chakra-lit finger. He had fulfilled the prophecy's purpose. He died content, knowing that the next generation would annihilate his former students and bring peace to the elemental nations. As he sank into the sea, he considered the title of the next chapter in his life story, The Adventures of the Namikaze Children. Yes, that has a nice ring to it. I'll hand over the editing to them. Konoha. Rain fell from the sky onto the black-clad people below. In Konoha, it was a time of mourning. One of their greatest heroes had been assassinated. Minato, Tsunade, Shio, Kushina, and Kakashi stood at the front of the group, preparing their speeches. He tossed aside a few cards that had been prepared by the elders. He'd give this speech from the bottom of his heart. Thank you all for coming on this sad day. One of our greatest heroes, Jiraiya of the Sannin, or Jiraiya the Toad Sage, both legendary titles of the previous generation. Not many people knew Jiraiya outside of his legend. He was one of the most perverted men I know. But he was an honorable man. His death will not go unpunished. The Akatsuki will answer for their crimes. The crowd applauded the rousing speech and began to disperse after leaving flowers on the Sannin's grave. Minato turned to face his daughter, who was standing near Jiraiya's grave. Minato could tell she was upset because her hair was down and her fringe was covering her eyes. He also knew she preferred to be alone at this time. From Shio's perspective, Shio felt empty inside as he stared down at Jiraiya's smiling face in the picture. Jiraiya had been an uncle to her and, on occasion, a father figure when Minato was away on business. She couldn't stop thinking about her time with the perverted hermit. You shouldn't be so sad the old hermit was dead. He had nothing left to teach you, and the pervert probably didn't have much longer to live anyway, a voice inside her head said. Shio was usually tolerant of her dark side. She realized it was a part of herself and did her best to live with it. But there was one thing she would never tolerate: insulting dead allies. Don't you dare insult him, she screamed at her dark side. You have no right to make fun of his sacrifice. And what are you going to do about it if I continue to insult him? He was nothing but a perverted hermit who deserved what he got, Yami said with a smirk. Shio began to hate another being with all her heart for the first time in her life. To enter her mindscape, she closed her eyes and went into a meditative state. When she opened her eyes, she was on a large pillar with harsh wind blowing around her. After removing all of the Kyuubi's chakra, Yami had completely removed the seal, revealing her true mindscape. She assumed it reflected her affinity for the wind. But she wasn't here to take in the scenery. She glared at her darkness, who smirked at her from across the large stone pillar. Her Yami wore a white version of her funeral attire, which consisted of a black turtleneck shirt and black shinobi pants. So you finally come here, are you finally willing to fight for control of this body? Yami smirked to her light side. Shio summoned her katana, and the wind formed a cyclone around the pillar. She drew her sword slowly and held it to her side, staring at the source of her dark emotions. It is time to show you that I am in control of this body, she said. Ah. You and your self-righteousness make me sick. The only reason you're willing to fight for your pathetic body is because I insulted your dead mentor. It's pathetic that the only reason you're willing to fight is to honor the memory of a dead idiot. Shio's eyes narrowed as she looked at her dark side. I can't believe you're a part of me. You can't even comprehend that I don't get my strength from myself, but rather from my friends and supporters. Yami frowned, and dark orbs encircled her. Then allow us to put your fortitude to the test. Remember, whoever loses this fight will lose control of their body for the rest of their lives. The three dark orbs surrounding her transformed into a large broadsword as she spoke. Shio's eyes narrowed as she fought against her dark side, never knowing joy or affection for anyone else, but she would never give up this body. As they fought, the two swords appeared to be arcs of light and dark, and they locked blades in the middle of the pillar and glared at each other. Yami pushed Shio back and jumped into the air, floating in the air as she summoned 6 spheres of corrupted chakra and launched them at Shio. Can you withstand the power you've kept hidden your entire life? Never, ever try to use it. What nonsense. Shio gritted her teeth as she felt the force of the orbs impacting her shield and replied to Yami, because it is evil, I never used that power. It corrupts the mind until all that remains is rage. Yami growled angrily, charged her sword with more demonic energy, and yelled, that's why you're frail. You refuse to seek more power. You are content to remain helpless and weak, relying on your so-called friends to save you. Yami descended from the sky, her sword surrounded by a dark aura. Shio clenched her teeth at the constant insults to her friends and summoned wind to sharpen her sword to the maximum before leaping to meet Yami's strike. The two collided in midair, creating 2 large auras in the air as the glowing sword collided with Yami's nihilistic blade. Shio's eyes widened as cracks appeared along her katana, and the beautiful blade was shattered as Yami was pushed back at high speeds, causing a large plume of dust to erupt from the pillar. Yami landed softly on the pillar and smirked as the dust cloud dissipated to reveal a wounded Shio. Her katana had managed to absorb the majority of the attack, but the splinters of her sword had cut her in multiple places. The dark entity began to walk slowly forward, savoring the moment she would end her jailer. Shio panted as she struggled to rise and looked at the shattered handle of her katana, which had been the symbol of her willpower, but it had shattered under the weight of Yami's hatred. She closed her eyes in preparation for the end when she heard her brother's voice, "You're not going to just give up, are you? Even you are more powerful than Shio." Shio quickly looked up to see the spirits of all of her friends and family smiling at her and encouraging her to keep fighting. She wondered briefly why Menma was at the front of the group before they parted and Jiraiya stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Shio, I know you can do it. You are more powerful than she is. Make us happy." The spirits of her friends vanished one by one, with Menma's spirits being the last to vanish, giving her a nod of acknowledgement before vanishing as well. She refocused on her broken sword and tightened her grip on the blade. Yami was approaching the downed Shio when she was stopped by a surge of power from her light side. Her eyes widened as Shio stood up, all her wounds healed and holding a katana made of pure light. She backed away from the light, its essence burning her. For the first time during the fight, she felt fear against her opponent. What exactly is this? I had broken your resolve. What power could possibly provide you with such strength? Shio stood over her dark side, her eyes blazing with strength, and raised her sword, "My friends." She swung the sword down, and Yami closed her eyes in fear, waiting for the end, but after a few moments she opened her eyes to see the sword inches from her neck, but not piercing the skin. Shio spoke as she removed her sword from her dark side's neck. "I'll win this fight, but I'm not going to destroy you, Yami. Regardless, you are still a part of me. We balance each other out. You are my pride, my fear, and all of my dark emotions. Many of your ideas may not be mine, but they are required to complete me. Instead of one of us killing the other, I propose that we combine our strengths back into one." Yami sighed and laughed a little. "Even after defeating me, you are still too soft. However, I believe that combining is preferable to simply disappearing in this situation. So, you've struck a deal. I have to say that I'm glad you were my other." Shio nodded, and both sides clasped hands before dissolving into particles of dark and light glass. In the real world. Shio opened her eyes with a start and looked around, realizing that only a few hours had passed based on the position of the sun. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, feeling complete for the first time since Yami appeared, and she now felt the emotions that Yami represented, but she would not make the mistake of suppressing these emotions. She returned her gaze to Jiraiya's grave, but she did not feel the same overwhelming sadness she had before, knowing the old hermit was at peace wherever he was. She turned away, but said one last sentence to his grave, "Goodbye, Jiraiya-sensei." It was the first time she had ever addressed the Sannin by his name. From Menma's perspective, Menma walked away from the funeral, letting his feet carry him through Konoha's streets. He hadn't known the Sannin all that well, but he was still saddened by his death. Despite his perverted tendencies, he was still a good man. He eventually realized his feet had carried him to the laboratory where he began his journey so long ago, and he smiled a little as he read over his old notes and calculations. He had informed Anko of this place early in his genin career, only to learn that this place wasn't so secret after all. The laboratory apparently was an abandoned research center for the Sannin and his apprentice, and it had been abandoned and forgotten about after he had defected, but no one wanted to enter. When he felt a summoning from the spiders, his view of the lab quickly changed to the familiar scenery of the spider summoning realm, where he spotted Arachne sitting on her throne and walked up to her. "It's great to see you again, Arachne. Why have you summoned me?" Arachne set down a glass of wine or blood, which he had never asked for, and turned to him with a sad smile. "It is time for you to perform the final trial as a summoner of the Spider Clan." Menma scowled. "I thought I passed all the trials when I mastered Spider Senjutsu?" Arachne spun around. "No way, not yet. The final trial is more difficult than simply training." Menma looked around for anything that could be his final trial when the floor beneath the throne vanished and he fell beneath the forest before he could react. In any other situation, he would have been calm, but falling to his perceived death, the only thing he could do was cry out in alarm. "These are the spider caverns." Menma eventually managed to slow his descent with his chakra strings and landed safely on the ground. He quickly surveyed his surroundings and was shocked to see he was on a large square stone platform with many spider webs connecting it to the sides of the cave he was in. He looked at the far wall and saw many statues of humans in various positions of agony. "So, where are we?" Arachne had a sad expression on her face as she looked at the man she had helped raise since he was a young adult. "We've arrived in the caverns beneath the forest." This was the home of an older race of spiders. They were simply known as the Erubians. We know very little about them except that they existed thousands of years before our current species. This room was the throne room, where the race's leader resided. We are now using this room to hold the final trial of our summoners. Menma scowled. "And what exactly is this final trial?" Arachne spoke as she looked over the side of the platform, a fight to the death between the clan's current hive mind and the summoner. "This is an ancient tradition to keep our clan strong. The winner will be the new leader of the hive mind." Menma was taken aback. "What? That is not possible. Isn't there another option?" Arachne shakes her head. "No, this is an ancient clan tradition. The statues we see around us aren't just for show. They are all previous summoners who failed one of the trials to become our summoner. You are one of only 2 summoners to have gotten this far." Menma looked down over the ledge of the large platform. There had to be hundreds of people down there, and he spoke sadly to his mother figure. "Do we have to do this?" As they prepared for battle, Arachne appeared remorseful. "It's unfortunate, but there's no other way to keep the clan's strength. The spiders will only follow the most powerful. If we both stood at the top, the spider clan would split and eventually fight each other. Now, summoner, stand tall. You are now up against the true might of the arachnids." Arachne was enveloped in a large green aura, and in a flash of green light, she revealed her true form. Menma involuntarily began backing away cautiously as Arachne emerged from the green light. Her spider form was massive, with her lower body being that of a spider and nearly as large as the Hokage's tower, and her upper body having 4 arms and glowing green eyes. "This is your final summoner for a trial." If you defeat me, my power will be yours. If you fail, you will die like the others, and this cave will be your final resting place. Menma cursed inwardly, knowing he couldn't persuade Arachne to stop her madness, but he had to jump out of the way as the Queen of the Spiders charged forward, stopping just short of the edge of the platform. Arachne quickly turned around and began spraying poison from her mouth around the arena. Menma could only dodge the poison because, despite his resistance to it, he knew he wouldn't survive a direct hit with Arachne's neurotoxin. As he dodged another bullet of poison, he dashed forward, using his enhanced strength and black blood to jump high into the air, entrapment with spider silk. Strings of chakra spider silk erupted from his chakra points and wrapped around the form of Arachne, binding her for a short time. The large arachnid struggled with the bindings, quickly tearing through some of them as she began to follow the fleeing human. But you're not going to leave this cave until one of us is dead. Menma dashed down some of the tunnels, hands clasped with spider silk, absorbing nature chakra as quickly as he could while moving. He knew he couldn't defeat Arachne as a human, so he decided to transform into a level 3 senjutsu. He could hear Arachne behind him, but he quickly erected chakra strand walls to keep her at bay while he worked. It appeared that absorbing senjutsu was easier in these caverns. He walked through the shadow of a large statue of an arachnid-like creature. He was now in his level 2 senjutsu form as he emerged from the shadow of it. When he heard Arachne chasing him, he quickly turned down a side tunnel and was stunned to see he was back where he started. As he waited for the Spider Queen to emerge, he prayed that his level 3 transformation would be completed in time. Arachne entered the trial room slowly and noticed Menma with his hands clasped in prayer, a slight green glow surrounding them as he waited for her. She smirked slightly, knowing what he was up to. "Come Menma, let us finally fight as equals." It seemed like this fight was about to get interesting. Menma felt a sufficient amount of nature chakra enter and balance within his body, which he then released into the rest of his body. He was surrounded by a large dark green aura. He remembered the conversation he had with Arachne while training, as well as the warning she had given him. Flashback. Menma was currently in stage 2 of senjutsu and absorbing power, and he was so close to reaching level 3 that he could taste it. However, before he could transform, Arachne shouted, "Stop." Knowing that he had to obey her commands during training, he stopped gathering nature chakra, frustrated. "Why did you make me stop, sensei?" "I was almost at the final level," he said. "While that is impressive, I did not tell you to stop because you made a mistake. Instead, I will give you a warning about entering level 3 senjutsu. This form will be your most powerful, but each level 3 spider form is unique. I have seen 3 people achieve this power and each had different specialties. Some were more focused on long range while others were more suitable to close range combat. However, there is a risk to this power." Menma cocked his brow. Senjutsu was already dangerous because one mistake could unbalance your chakra, which could have disastrous consequences depending on which clan you learned senjutsu from. After entering your third and final form, that form will be your true form, Arachne continued. Menma was perplexed. True form? What do you mean? I mean, simply your spider side will affect your human side to such a degree that you will no longer be a human with spider powers, but a spider with the ability to transform into a human, Arachne explained. Menma's eyes widened. So I'll lose my humanity? Yes, in time you will learn how to transform yourself back into a human, Arachne said, but it will take around a month of constant practice, and that is only if you want to. Give me some time to decide, Menma said, frustrated. I thought you'd like some time to think it over. It's not an easy decision to lose your humanity after all. Arachne nodded. But know this, you'll need an anchor to remember your humanity after transforming. Someone with whom you have a special bond. As long as that person is inside your heart, you'll retain your human mind and eventually be able to return to yourself. Menma nodded, lost in thought, looking around at the other spiders. Flashback concludes. He closed his eyes as he felt his body transform once more. I am sorry everyone, I must do this. But I promise I'll get back to you. The light eventually faded, allowing Arachne to see Menma's transformed state. He was barely bigger than a human. He had dark purple skin and glowing purple tribal tattoos on his chest. Except for his chest, he had an armored carapace attached to many parts of his body, forming a sort of armor. Large scythe-like blades dripped a venomous green poison from the backs of his arms. He also had large insectoid wings on his back that flapped from time to time. She recognized her potential successor's good fortune. Although there were few spiders with wings, he must have absorbed their properties as he entered level 3 Senjutsu form. Arachne observed the rest of him, but it was his eyes that drew her attention the most. They glowed a dark green, power radiating from them. Despite his impressive physique, she couldn't help but be disappointed. She had anticipated a larger form, possibly even on her scale. He was barely any bigger than before. She was about to mock his appearance when he vanished, and suddenly behind her, scythes were raised to deeply wound her. She quickly moved to the side and took a closer look at the new Menma. Because of his small stature, she appeared to have underestimated him. She hypothesized that all of the level 3 transformation's power was condensed in that small body, increasing his strength, speed, stamina, and power even more than his other transformations. Come summoner, we shall finally end this trial. She flexed her claw-like hands as she anticipated the battle. As a result, the two titans clashed. They fought like beasts in a never-ending battle for dominance. Arachne quickly discovered that, despite his berserker-like state from only entering level 3, he could still heal even the most severe injuries as she attacked him. She assumed his medic skills carried over to his empowered form. She knew she was going to lose this fight. Despite her larger size and experience, she was unable to deal with Menma's raw power. She was pleased that the student she had taught was finally outperforming her. Menma roared and leapt into the air, stabbing both of his scythe arms into Arachne's body. The Spider Queen screamed in agony as she shrank back down to her human form, unable to transform due to the injuries to her other body. As Menma approached, she sighed. It appeared that this was the end of her. She could only hope that Menma's human mind would not be corrupted by this power. Arachne closed her eyes, ready for the end. Menma walked forward, every instinct telling him to sever the woman's neck in front of him. But in the back of his mind, a voice yelled at him to stop. He struggled as the two wills inside his head competed for supremacy. Little did either of them realize that the crystal eye was beginning to glow behind them as the fight came to a close. From Menma's mindscape. Menma's mental representation as a human was restraining his bestial side in order to save Arachne's life. He would not lose one of his most prized possessions. Not least of all his mother figure. Inari observed the battle between two aspects of his host's consciousness on the lake in front of him. After Menma's influx of chakra from entering stage 3 Sage mode, he had finally regained his ninth tail. He was impressed by his host's progress over the years, but he kept his word and no longer interfered in his host's life. However, he decided that interfering in this battle would be in his summoner's best interests, and assist him in atoning for his actions during Menma's childhood. Foxfire engulfed him and merged the two sides of their consciousness into a single being. As he watched the now human-minded form of Sage Mode calm down and regain his human mind, the god of foxes settled down onto his paws. Menma inhaled deeply as the fog that had engulfed his mind lifted. The last thing he remembered was entering the senjutsu form of stage 3. When he remembered what he was doing, his head shot up and he looked around. When he realized he was in his mindscape, he calmed down. He noticed the changes that had occurred during his absence. The lake that had housed his chakra had turned into a virtual sea, spreading in every direction. He turned to face Inari and noticed the Torii Gates ring in the distance. He moved slowly in that direction, not eager to confront the old spirit. Inari looked down at the host who had kept him alive for the past 17 years. The frail human who had struggled through life had vanished. In front of him stood a being who had surpassed human limits and become truly powerful. Maybe there was a chance now against the Jubi. But for the time being, let's deal with the current situation. So you've come before me again, Menma. What do you want to ask of me? You are the god of all wild animals, Menma said. Do you know of anything that could save Arachne? I do not wish to kill her or become the hive mind of the spider clan. Inari closed his eyes in thought, telling Menma that this information could either bring new terror to the world or help save it. He looked at Menma and nodded. Yes, that race could be redeemed under you, Menma. They will not cause trouble for humanity again with a strong leader like you. Inari opened his eyes and sat on his haunches. In order for you to save Arachne, you will need to destroy the current order of the Spider Clan. What? I don't understand. Why would destroying the Spider Clan save Arachne? Menma exclaimed. Inari continued, because the Spider Clan was not always a hive mind. Long ago during the time of the Sage of the Six Paths, a race known as the Arubians once roamed the earth. They were an intelligent civilization, rivaling the greatest thinkers of the day. However, their one flaw was an insatiable thirst for conquest. They constantly went to war with the humans, killing thousands. Menma frowned as he weighed his options, but then he had an epiphany. What about the many spiders in the elemental nations? Will they all transform back into Arubians? No, only the strongest among the Spider Clan will revert back to their original form. The spiders you know today outside of this world are too far along in the evolutionary chain to revert back, Inari said, shaking his head. Menma nodded, deciding, tell me how to break the curse. Throne room in Aruba. Menma returned to his true form, his scythe inches from Arachne's throat. The woman's eyes were closed in acceptance as she awaited the final blow. Instead of slicing her throat, Menma leapt forward onto the far wall and thrust both of his scythes into the crystal's eye, completely destroying it. Arachne opened her eyes in shock as she observed her successor's actions. What have you done? That crystal was an ancient relic of the Spider Clan, she exclaimed before becoming the hive mind. She looked up, stunned, at Menma. That crystal was no simple relic. It held the cursed chakra of Kaguya the rabbit goddess. It corrupted the entire Spider Clan, preventing them from achieving their true forms, Menma said, shaking his head. Arachne looked perplexed. True forms. She trailed off as she heard spiders scurrying towards them. As the proud figures of the Arubian people entered the room, she stood up and faced the entrances. The swarm was led by 3 large Arubans. They approached the two and nodded respectfully. Greetings. I am known as the Prophet Aragog. These are my contemporaries, Prophet Vex and Prophet Marrow. I fought alongside you against your bloodkin, but I was in my lesser form then. We would like to thank you for releasing the curse that the witch Kaguya placed upon our people. We respect your strength and declare you leader of our tribe, said the middle figure. Menma smiled as he looked around the chamber at the hundreds of arachnids. They now had an army to fight the Akatsuki with. The combined weight of humans and Arubians would be too much for Madara and Kaguya to bear. I am Menma Gorgon, shinobi of Konohagakure, the plaguebringer of the elemental nations. In the past, this species was known as a blight upon the world. But now it will be seen as its savior, as we join together to defeat Kaguya's minions and the god that supports her. Join with me and we will create a brighter future for this world," said Menma. As they worked to restore the Arubians' halls to their former glory, all the Arubians cheered in their insect-like voices. "So you were given two impossible choices and managed to find a third. I must say you surpassed my final trial by leaps and bounds." Arachne approached Menma from behind. For many years, Menma had turned to his mentor and said, "I couldn't let you simply die." Elise. "So you figured it out?" "Yes, I was the previous summoner of the Spider Clan. I did not have such an attachment with the previous hive mind and managed to kill him quite easily." "So you figured it out?" "Yes, I was the previous summoner of the Spider Clan. I did not have such an attachment with the previous hive mind and managed to kill him quite easily." "Why don't you join Konoha? It could be the start of your new life," Menma suggested. "I might," Arachne said wistfully, looking at the working transformed arachnids. "It will be strange getting reacquainted with society, but it will be a nice change of pace from the forest. But for now, I must train on reverting to my human form. I cannot return looking like this, or I will be mistaken for a demon," Menma said, frowning. "Yes, I will help you," Elise said, nodding. "The process is not difficult once you do it the first time, but it will take several weeks to perfect switching forms instantly, and you will also need to find the other benefits of that form besides the fancy blades." Menma nodded, and the two of them exited the caverns to train. He had no idea how much he would need these new abilities in the future battles. The village of Hidden Rain. 5 capsules were opened, revealing people with orange hair dressed in black cloaks. As they gathered around their master, they each stood up, revealing purple rippled eyes. Pain stood in front of his paths and turned to face Konoha, saying, "Let's go."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.